So today we are going to be taking a look at the Japanese cult classic action thriller Battle Royale by, and I hope I don't mispronounce this, Koushun Takami. And so the basic premise of the book is there is this authoritarian government that every year hosts several programs, and the program is a game where middle schoolers, the age of 15 in Japan, are all forced, their entire class is rounded up, and they are put in on a deserted island or someplace, and they're forced to kill each other until there's only one remaining. This may be somewhat reminiscent to those who are familiar with Hunger Games. It's a very similar plot. Battle Royale was written first, although it wasn't translated until, I think, after Hunger Games came out, so probably just parallel lines of thinking there. Anyways, very fast and action-packed. The style somewhat reminds me of Hemingway in its like simplicity, although he doesn't go into very as much detail as Hemingway. And so the basic style supports both the character development and the plot very well and allows it to go at a very fast pace, which is nice because it's a page turner. There is the authoritarian government also reminds me a bit of the hyper control based authoritarian government in 1984 by Orwell. There's like a lot of themes of the corruption of humanity or degradation under extreme circumstances. That's like Lord of the Flies, but if Lord of the Flies was like a V6, this is like a V8 or a V12 or something. To use that metaphor, this is like supercharged, very violent, very brutal. There's some stylization in there that is I found interesting and good for character development. Like some of the characters are just way larger than life, not realistic, and then some of the characters have very realistic reactions to their situation. There's also a graphic novel of this. I've read the graphic novel, although that was when I was quite a bit younger, so can't comment too much on that. But the book is very entertaining. Let's get into one side note is something I found interesting, and I think this is just a Japanese culture thing, but people's crushes is like a huge like theme in this book, and so it's very interesting to get like this juxtaposition between people talking about their crushes or that sort of thing, and they're like worried about killing people of the opposite gender or like the people that they are attracted to dying, and then juxtaposed with very extreme violence. And so it's interesting for sure. So the ratings: utility 2.5. I think this is the first fiction book I've reviewed. In general, there we go. Sorry if that's disorienting. In general, I don't think that fiction is particularly useful unless it like really underscores some themes in a really profound way. This talks a little bit about like authoritarian governments, I suppose, but not, or like there is an authoritarian government, but it doesn't really like drive home the points of like how the government is authoritarian and like how like as a cautionary tale in the same way Orwell is. Just it seems similar in terms of what it is, but like it's not explored as much. And so because some of the characters are also like stylized, I don't think it really fully explores like the idea of how humanity degrades in stressful situations in the same way Lord of the Flies does. So utility, I had to give it a low score. For novelty, I give it a 4. I think that the novel parts that are interesting are perhaps indicative of Japanese culture, or if you've never been exposed to this idea of like the Hunger Games Battle Royale scenario where people who have no business killing each other are forced to kill each other is like it's interesting psychologically, but you can find it in a lot of other places. So I had a hard time giving this a high novelty score. I gave it a little bit because I do think there were some parts that I thought were indicative of Japanese culture that as an English speaker I don't encounter that I thought were interesting, and so it got a little bit there. Entertainment, I gave it a 9. Very entertaining. maybe not the absolute most entertaining book I've read, but in terms of just action-packed, fast-paced books, this is pretty high up there. For style, I gave it a 7.5. I rather like the style, which is like I said, a bit more simple. Some parts of it seem like it maybe doesn't translate too well. I also really like a lot of the asides that the characters, that like either the narrator gives or that the characters themselves think, and some of the writing is like from the character's perspective, and that's interesting, and then there's like also outside perspective. It's done in a way that's quite well, considering how on the surface of it, like, basic sounding it is, but there's a lot of, there aren't any like extremely like or there's not a lot of extremely good prose, I guess is the way I'd want to word it. And part of that might just be like the translation, right? Or the translating process, not blaming the translator. Oh, interesting note. I absolutely love the about the translator section in the back of the book. I've never seen anything like this. It's about the translator, and it's one sentence. And it's, this person is an author and translator. And it's like, well, I knew you were a translator already, so this about the translator section gave me basically no information. But, yeah, it's just, I thought, I laughed pretty hard when I read that. So readability, I gave it an 8. Very simple, easy to read. Maybe I should have given it even higher. Some of the violence might be off-putting, I guess. The violence is very graphically described. Okay. For interesting, I gave it a 6. There's not, like, ideas in there that are impossible to find, but I did find the premise interesting, right, of, you know, exploring this, like, normal people put in high stress situation and their kids and like that sort of thing, as well as some elements of Japanese culture I found interesting, but there's like no information in there that like I didn't know before that this is like a source of information for me. So it's not interesting in that way. It's interesting in both the premise being interesting as well as being exposed to another culture's literature or literary piece that is interesting. Although initially when it was released, there was a lot of backlash as it just being just excessively violent, like no substance piece. So for an overall rating of 6.17. For discussion questions, so I haven't read Hunger Games. And I was wondering if anyone in the comments had read both Hunger Games and Battle Royale and would like to compare and contrast a little bit, because I'm curious about that. Also, this is my, I'm pretty sure this is the first fiction book I have reviewed. And if anyone has any feedback regarding reviewing fiction, because I almost read exclusively nonfiction and that's all I really review, that sort of feedback would be appreciated in the comments as well. And have a good one.